Welcome to the Joint Special Operations University Fireside Chat. I'm your host, Mike Lundstrom, and I had the distinct pleasure of interviewing Command Sgt JoAnn Naumann for this episode. In this interview, we talked about leadership topics that covered transformation, education, and warrior ethos. For me, as a leadership person, it was really interesting, and I enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoy it too. Without further ado, let's run it. Welcome to Fireside Chat. I'm your host, Mike Lundstrom, and I'm here with a special guest today, Command Sgt JoAnn Naumann, the Senior Enlisted Leader, Command Senior Enlisted Leader to United States Army Special Operations Command. CSM, how are you doing today, and welcome?
I'm great, Mike. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
So for the audience, I've been dying to have her on Fireside Chat for quite a while, and I'm so happy that you're here. And so a little bit about why this is happening. I work in the leadership department here in the college at the Joint Special Operations University, and this is probably the first Fireside Chat where I've had to actually talk about leadership topics. And today I want to talk to her. I'm going to look a little bit at her background so you can kind of get a understanding of how she came up through the soft ranks, if you will. And then we're going to kind of get into a leadership topic I think is challenging for everybody, and that's change and transformation. And her enterprise is the largest in the SOCOM enterprise, and there's a lot going on there. And then I'm going to probably transition a little bit to education, and then we'll see where it goes from there. So let's get after it. So
Right.
Joe, if I may call you.
Absolutely.
Yep. Tell us a little bit about your background and your little story in SOF, big story in SOF, I should say.
A total accident. That's how I started. This was not my plan.
Yeah.
I enlisted in the Army in 1996 after I graduated from college. I wanted to be in the Foreign Service, and it's really hard to get in right out of college. Yeah. And so I was looking for options to improve my opportunities in the State Department, and decided to enlist in the Army for a couple of reasons. One, to learn Arabic. So learn a language that probably hard to find a lot of Americans who speak it. This was in the mid-90s, so very different geopolitical environment than we found ourselves in. And then get the clearance and get veterans hiring preference. And then my plan was to move on to the State Department. Decided I kind of liked the Army. Got some good opportunities to study overseas and do some things that interested me, so I thought I would maybe put that State Department thing off for a couple of years. And in the summer of 2001, I was at the 101st Airborne Division. And I mean, in the 90s, we played War in the Woods. That's what you did. There wasn't deployments.
I remember those days, yes.
Yeah, right? I mean, no one was going anywhere. No one was doing anything. And I kind of felt like if I was going to do this Army thing for a few more years, I wanted to deploy. I wanted to go overseas. And so I put a packet in for a special mission unit in the summer of 2001. Everybody got deployments a couple months later. But my packet was good enough to get me into assessment and selection. I went to assessment and selection, and then I went to the operative training course in 2002. Ironically, at that point, I thought now I'm going to miss the war. Right, like I'm doing this soft thing to get a deployment. I'm going to miss the war because I'm in training. Didn't work out that way, and so I joined the Special Mission Unit. Started deploying with them in the early 2003, and stayed there basically until 2015. Lots of deployments. I've got about 14 total deployments. If it's in CENTCOM, I've probably been there. But I've also done a lot of AFRICOM work. And so after that, I went to the JSOC staff. I was the J2 Sergeant Major.
I was going to say, there's only so many echelons you can go in a deploying unit. You have to
go at some point.
Yeah.
So shortly after I promoted to Sergeant Major, I applied for the position at JSOC J2 Sergeant Major, moved down to Fort Bragg, spent about 3 years in that job. Actually did my battalion CSM time in the General Purpose Force. So made the decision to compete in the Army, was the Sergeant Major for an aerial exploitation battalion that had deployments across CENTCOM and AFRICOM as well. So still was getting out, doing the thing, and actually working with a lot of soft units that my battalion was deployed in support of. And then came back into the JSOC enterprise. I was the JSOC Intel Brigade CSM, for just a little bit over a year before I was selected to be the SOC Corps Senior Enlisted Leader. So after all that time in Africa and Central Asia, all of a sudden it was, hey, we want you to go to Korea. I knew where Korea was on the map. I mean, right, a little bit more than that, but my knowledge of the Pacific was pretty limited. But I got the job, and so I moved out to Korea for a couple of years. And
that was your first or second NOM position?
That was my first NOM position.
So nominative being, working with a general officer as a senior enlisted leader.
Yeah. So
really your career is really starting to take off.
Yeah. So I worked with Major General Mike Martin over in Korea for 2 years, and right towards the end of my 2-year tour there in Korea, General Braga selected me to be the USASOC CSM. So moved back. It's just 2 years.
Yeah, and that was a pretty competitive field that went after that too. Both selections were pretty competitive.
I mean, an honor to even be considered to be the USASOC CSM. But I've known General Braga for a long time. Major Braga and I worked together in Iraq a little bit, a long time ago, and then we served on the JSOC staff together.
Yeah. And just to kind of put a cap on the soft career here. You got Pathfinder, you got Jump Wings, you got Free Fall Wings.
No Pathfinder.
Air
Assault.
Air Assault, there it is. I see.
Air Crew,
yeah. And
Airborne, and Free Fall.
Free Fall. So that's a lot of training along the way to do a lot of interesting things. So appreciate that. So now you're here at the nominative level. You're dealing with organizational leadership, not individual leadership, and you are going through one of the most challenging times, I think, since probably the inception of SOCOM. We are changing. And USASOC has had, over the last few years, has had some significant changes. And whatever you're comfortable talking about, so I can kind of just get into that transformation piece a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, you made the perfect point. USASOC is undergoing the largest transformation, I think probably that it's ever undergone since USASOC stood up as a headquarters. Certainly the largest transformation I've experienced in my career. And it really is a holistic change. And so, I'll start with just force structure. I mean, so USASOC is about 36,000 total people.
And for our audience, that's the 900-pound gorilla, as I like to put it.
It is absolutely.
It's the largest force in the SOCOM formation.
Yeah, just over 50% of the total SOCOM population. Yep. And we're completely relooking, like, what does our force need to look like? What is the soft unit of action in the future? Because we don't think that it's exactly the same as it has been. The threats are different. The threats are global. And so how do we more effectively present our force so that we can get after those problems? And so the biggest change that we've made, that we've found really great success from, is that we've traditionally had SF groups. So your Green Berets are in groups, they're regionally aligned, right? So each group is aligned to a different global combatant command or geographic combatant command. And then the CA, the civil affairs battalions were separate, and the PSYOP battalions were separate, but also looking at regional problem sets. And so we've changed the paradigm, and we've created our soft groups. And so now, if you're 10th group looking at Europe, that civil affairs battalion that's looking at Europe and that PSYOP battalion that's looking at Europe, they're assigned to 10th group now. They work for the same 06. But
that's streamlining, actually.
Well, it's brought those capabilities together, right? And so instead of pockets of excellence where we're all doing things in the European theater or to influence what's going on in the European theater, now all of those activities are interlocking and they're supporting one another. And sometimes it might be SF that's the lead effort with some PSYOPs in the background supporting what they're doing, right? Getting the message out there, or getting the message we want out there, even if that's not exactly what the SF group is doing. Right. The civil affairs is working the governance piece in support of that. But then it might turn around and it might be the civil affairs that's the lead in some places, because the governance part is more important. And we're bringing those other efforts in behind that. But that 06 commander can look at the problem set now holistically, instead of just, well, I'm going to do my piece of this, and everyone's kind of out there doing their own thing. So.
Yeah, it all kind of has a soup to nuts approach that brings more capabilities to a partner or to whatever we're servicing?
It's, I mean, change is hard. There's a lot of angst, right? People are used to the way things have always been, which is not really the way it's always been.
Sure,
It's just only the way that it is in our heads or in our time. But the response when we go out and talk to people who maybe weren't even, might have even been opposed to the idea when it was kind of forced upon them, the overwhelming response is positive.
So you had a big communication, campaign's not the right word, but an effort, an approach to understanding the need for change.
It's still ongoing communication. I mean, people are concerned not just about like, okay, well, I don't report to the same person, but like, what are my career prospects, right? So just like you mentioned, RSOF is kind of the 800-pound gorilla to SOCOM. SF is the largest proportion of our operational force.
That's right.
By far. Yeah. And so there was some very honest concerns from civil affairs and PSYOP, like, well, now am I just going to get consumed by the 800-pound gorilla within the RSOF family of SF? But they're not finding that.
No, I've always found SF to be very accommodating.
I think actually, ultimately, it opens up opportunities, right? There might, again, I go back to there are going to be places where that civil affair or PSYOP might need to take the lead. And because of their integration and their understanding of all parts of the enterprise, because they've been working together, you're gonna see, down the road, some of those officers might wind up being the commanders. Some of those sergeants major might wind up being the sergeant major, because you're not going to ever have. I don't have the same exact experience as everyone in RSOF, but I have a breadth of experience that allows me to speak for them, understand what they're going through, and represent them. And you're going to see, I think, more of the same thing. I think you're going to see expanded opportunities, not decreased.
Yeah, I think so too. But the anxiety, the human condition is to go to the dark place first, right?
It is, and that's leadership's job, right? Is communication, and communication is probably the hardest thing we do. Yeah. It is incredibly challenging to communicate with a formation of 36,000 people who are spread across, multiple different installations, just permanent presence, but then also spread across 70 to 80 countries on any given day.
So that also goes for the support brigade behind all that. Like, I know a lot of those folks too, and I think they took some manpower hits a year or two ago.
They did take some manpower hits. Well, they'll take them really over the next 5 years. So it's spread out over a 5-year period. But we're going to lose about 3,000 billets over the next 5 years. It's done, right? And that's where USASOC is on that. Like, we can sit here and we can stew on the fact that we're going to lose 3,000 billets, or we can use that as part of this transformation. Like, how are we going to do things more effectively? Or what other organizations are we going to lean on to do that? What things can we maybe not have to do anymore, right? Because we get so used to this, like, I have to do that.
I think that's the biggest.
Do you have to do it?
Right. What do you stop doing?
What do you stop doing?
Challenge, for sure.
But also, I think there's a lot of opportunity right now. And that was part of the Army's cuts that we lost that 3,000. But USASOC has really, as part of this transformation, we are so closely tied in with the Army. So we're very much involved in the Army's transforming contact efforts. USASOC formations are actually included in the Army's efforts this year. So 2 SF battalions and a Ranger battalion will all be part of the Army's transforming contact. New things that the Army is fielding will go out to those units to test them, see what they do with them. I can think of no better people to test new equipment than our people. I think we are professionally impatient and we think differently. We don't even see boxes, right? We don't color outside the box, we just don't make a box. And so I think, like, what better people to test new things that the Army is doing?
The word I've heard used before was marbling into the service, right? And if you're going to talk about readiness and lethality, and you bring that capability to the Army writ large,
it's a win. It's a win for everyone.
Yeah, big win.
So, so we're very much tied in with the Army with that, and we see it as opportunity, right? Like, instead of looking at we're going to lose things, okay, but what can we gain? We've created a new MOS that right now is soft peculiar, But I mean, we see it as like, this is something the Army is going to see and be like, well, we want this. And I think it will grow exponentially. So we're creating a new warrant officer position. It's going to be a 390 Alpha. And, we're hoping to have that finalized here in the next month or so.
For the non-Army people, 390 Alpha is?
390 Alpha is, it's a number indicator that tells you what your job is. So it's going to be a technology innovator and integrator. And so the intent is these won't be a person on a team necessarily, but they'll be more the people who are, at the company level, battalion level, who are looking at all the new technology that's out there. One, like, what do we need? What can I maybe create on my own? Because a lot of this stuff, like, we can build it and make it, 3D printers and all this stuff going on. I'm amazed every day what I see people in our formations just creating out of their own imagination.
Yeah. Well, when you see it happening abroad in conflicts in Europe and other places.
We've got to do it.
Yeah, got to do it.
We have to do it.
Yeah.
And then integrating that into our formation. So how do we use new technology to increase lethality, build it into how we fight in the future?
And that's a good segue into the next part of this.
Yeah.
Through transformation, you got a big tool in the toolkit, education, to help do that. How are you guys shaping education?
At every level. I'll tell you, I mean, I think the most obvious one we're doing is some changes to our 18 Bravos, our weapons sergeants. So about half of our 18 Bravos now, when they finish their training, are going immediately into our robotics course. Mm-hmm. So they're learning drones before they even go out to the operational force, because a drone is a weapon. Right? We think of the weapons sergeant and we think of traditionally what have been the weapons over the last 20 years. But drones are a weapon. And so, we just finished USASOC CAPEX last week, and one of our soldiers who was, in the CAPEX, he had his leg holster on, and he had built his own system for how he attaches a drone. And so, right? So, I mean, instead of carrying a pistol, he's carrying a drone. But that's just the way they're thinking, because, but that's education, right? It's getting them upskilled on how do you build drones? How do you use drones? How do you fly drones? Yeah. I don't know if you've tried the first-person viewer drones, but like, it's a little bit disconcerting.
I fear I love drone technology. I fear if I did that, my wallet would take a hit, because that absolutely is a blast.
The first time you put it on, though, it's a very weird. For me, I found it to be a very weird sensation.
Not for Gen Z or Gen X, right?
It's not. I know, right? But for me, it was a very strange sensation. So I mean, it's getting them trained up on that. So that's just one really simple, obvious one. But I do think, look, the U.S. military is made up of non-commissioned officers. It's made up of soldiers. And our non-commissioned officers are without a doubt the asymmetric advantage of the U.S. military.
Right, so you educate for professionalizing the force.
So we have got to educate our non-commissioned officers so that they are ready to take action in any environment. And that means they have to understand the environment. They have to understand the strategic outcomes of their actions, because there are small tactical actions right now that are having strategic level impacts.
Right. So the most lethal part of a soldier, an NCO, if you will, is that gray matter between the ears.
It's their mind.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that goes with everything. I mean, even down to the basic private on the line, like, firing your weapon's only effective if you hit your target.
That's right. Or you find initiative in the worst scenario, because you can think through it. I like to say education is when you're not faced with something you've never trained before, how do you deal with it? Education gets you past that.
It does. It's how to think, not what to think.
That's right. Yeah.
And training, I mean, we still need training, right? We still need that, like, we're going to go out in the field and we're going to repeat over and over our battle
Red
drill
team the hell out
until
of
we can't get it wrong. That is never going to go away. But I think in the current environment, ignoring education, like, if we do it, we're doing it at our own detriment. We need people who know how to think, not what to think.
It's always been a challenge, because I see education in our enterprise. I mean, we have a lot of it. and I think like if I was going to do pre-command course, for example, I would have an Army pre-command, I would have a SWIC pre-command, and I would have a
you have a SOCOM pre-command.
So yeah, that's like literally we have a lot of that. And I don't know what the right answer is, but I know we definitely have the emphasis already. Is how do we shape it to be the next level, next generation of education, especially as these younger, like you're talking about a young soldier that has this holster with a drone in it, like that's, yeah.
Yeah,
like
but that's him.
Do we meet that person's needs now, or do we need to be smarter about how we educate so we meet that person's needs in the future?
I think all education is about the future. Again, you might be instructing what they need now, right? Because none of us can predict what the future is going to be. We take our best guess, but I think it goes back to that. If you're making them learn about what's going on right now by making them really think through the problem, it builds that. What you're building really is that ability to think through the problem. Yep, okay, got it. They're solving the problem right now. But I don't think that you separate education into, is it about now or is it about the future? It's always about both.
Like to see where that's going down the road. Let me throw one more topic at you. Because as we're changing, as we're getting guidance down, we hear about warrior ethos. And how are we, maybe how are you guys, but building a warrior ethos or emphasizing warrior ethos within the formation?
I mean, one, I think SOF likes to fight, right? I mean, we want to be lethal. I don't think it's hard for me to convince my people that they...
no. That's probably our... We can't say no.
I don't have any problem convincing my people they want to be lethal. That's absolutely what they want.
Yeah.
But I think, number one, it starts with basic standards. Part of it is being the most professional force. I think one of the huge advantages that SOF has is that we do set high standards for our people right from day one. I mean, first of all, to be in an RSOF MOS, you're going to have to go through an assessment and selection. You're going to have to go through a training course.
And those standards are brutal.
I mean, our average selection rate at all of our ANSs is somewhere in about the 30% mark. They vary a little bit, and of course, any given class may be a little bit higher, a little bit lower. But about 30% of people who make it to day one are going to still be there at the end of selection. And so right there, I mean, we're setting a high standard for our people. Yeah. They have to want to be there.
I've noticed that throughout the years. I don't think that's ever changed. You're right.
No.
Yeah.
And we're not changing our standards. The standards will remain high. We can't afford anything less. It's quality. Yeah. I mean, the quantity is great, but SOF is about quality. But even then, our enablers, right? And so, I mean, in our SOF, in USASOC, what I'm getting is, when I'm looking at a personnelist or a logistician, I get what the Army sends.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But when they show up, we immediately indoctrinate them into.
It goes back to education again, right?
It's different here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's an expectation, and we expect you to live up to that expectation.
And once they see the mission,
they're
all bought in.
And so we give them purpose.
Yeah.
That's the next thing we do, right? We give you purpose, and then they want to stay. Yeah. We treat them like professionals. We expect them to be professionals.
Those are great points you made, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. And
I love talking about our people anytime.
Yeah, no, it's great. This was for the audience. This was an opportunity we caught. She's here visiting us on the campus, and we dragged her into the Fireside Chat. There was a little bit deliberate conversation.
Happy to do it.
But thank you so much for being here, ladies and gentlemen. Command Sgt Major JoAnn Naumann.
Thanks.
Hope you enjoyed that episode. If you like what you saw and would like to find more episodes like this or on other topics, please check out our Fireside Chat channel on YouTube. Thank you for listening.